Okay, welcome to the next section of Business Management Unit 2, Outcome 1, Communication of Business Summary. First of all, we're going to look at the three-step communication process and what that three-step communication process is. So this is the first thing we covered in the unit. Just give me a second here. So I've got a couple of things I'm going to bring in. So I might use typed headings for these. So, three-step communication process. Now, the first thing that happens in the communication process is there's a message that's going to be sent by the sender. So there's going to be somebody who has a message that they want to send to somebody else, and they're going to try and send it. Now, this is sort of missing from the arrow that I just copied in, but the message is encoded in a certain format by the sender. So they choose, they've got a message they want to send, and they've got a choice about what form that message can take. So, for example, if you've got a person, I'm just going to go and picture a person. You've got a guy, and he's thinking about sending a message. He's got a message that he wants to send. He wants to say, "How are you?" You know, he could write that he could encode that in a number of ways. He could do it verbally, by saying, "How are you?" He could write it in an SMS. He could do it in an email, and depending on the circumstances, he's going to encode it in different ways. So he's thought of a message, and then he's got to think about how he's going to encode it. So in this case, the message will be, "How are you?" And it's going to be transmitted to a receiver. Now the receiver is going to receive the message, and they're going to try and decode the message, and that means they're going to try and understand what that message means. So they hear that they've received the message, and they're going to try and work out what the sender was trying to say. So in this case, this person's received this message from the first guy, and he's decoding that message. So he might be thinking, "How am I?" So in this case, he's interpreted the message well. Finally, in a basic communication process, the receiver will send feedback to the sender to show them how well they've understood that message. Have they understood what was said, and have they interpreted it in a good way or correctly? So put this guy in again. So finally, and he might say back to the person that sent the message originally, they're going to say, "I'm well." Now the sender is going to know, based on that answer, that the message was understood well. So it's a basic three-step communication process. Now, when we talk about that process, though, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So next we're going to look at what can actually make that communication process a bit more effective. So I'll put in another heading here. Effective communicators. So this is the things you can do when you're communicating with people to make sure they're understood. Now, the first thing that happens is a sender will work out the message that they want to send, the exact message, before they send it. So work out the exact message before sending. So I could use the word transmitting or sending there. Okay, they worked out the exact message before sending. So if you've got a person, they're gonna think about all the different ways they could say something before actually sending it to make sure it's understood. So if we use the example of from our previous example of how are you, I know there's a few boys who like saying what's doing. He might that would be one way he could ask that. He might also think what's up. Or he might think, he could say, how are you? So all different ways in which the same message can be sent. Secondly, the effective communicators choose the best medium. So the medium is the way in which the message is sent. So I used the example before of you could ask somebody how you're going by SMS, you could ask them verbally, you could send an email, you could write them a letter. They're all, perhaps like writing a letter wouldn't be very likely, but it's a possible way of sending that message. So when you send your message, you're going to choose the best way to do it. So it might be by mobile phone, you might write a letter, it might be spoken. Now, in the case of business communication, remember the main things you use. We talk about face-to-face communication, or over the phone, or it might be via an email. You also need to make sure that you wait for feedback as well if you want to be a good communicator. So that should be wait, not what. So you wait to make sure that the person that you're sending the message to has understood what you said. You give them a chance to give you feedback. Okay, you don't sort of send the message and then just leave it. You also make sure you consider your audience. So what that means is you got to think about who you're communicating with. Now you probably talk, you students or the students in the class, you probably talk differently to your parents, to your teachers, and to your friends. You probably talk differently depending on whether you're talking to a boy or a girl and how old the person is. The same applies to businesses. Are you talking to a customer? Are you talking to a supplier? You need to make sure that the message you're sending is tailored to the person that's going to be receiving it. And finally, you make sure that you actually listen to the receiver. So the best way to know whether your message has been understood or not, or how effective it was, is to actually listen to get feedback and think about whether that person has actually understood what you wanted them to understand. So you listen to the receiver. So these are the different things that effective communicators do. They're the five things they need to do. Now moving on, there's different things that will affect decoding. So how the message is actually understood by the person that's receiving it. So this is factors that affect decoding. So remember, decoding is taking a message in its encoded form, so maybe something that the person said or a message that the person's written you, and trying to understand what the person meant by that message. Now, first of all, there's the message that's sent will be affected by different cultural differences. So there might be things like the importance of the way in which you address somebody in a different culture, or the way in which you wait for somebody in a certain culture. So think about the video that we watched regarding gestures in different cultures and what those mean. Now, the body language of a person is also the sender will also affect how the receiver decodes it. So think about if you're standing with if you're giving a thumbs up while you're saying something, then person probably you're probably saying yes with your message. Think about whether you have an open stance, that you're showing people your palms. This is all things that show that you're open in your communication. You can be trustworthy. Or do you have your arms crossed, which is quite closed? Okay. So think about the different body shapes that you can make will affect the message you're sending. Also, the mood of the receiver can affect how it's going to be decoded. So are they going to be respond well to a message if they're in a good mood, or if they're in a bad mood, or if they're sad, or if they're really happy? The decoding can also be affected by the environment within which the message occurs. So what we mean by environment is the physical environment. Think about whether the communication's occurring in a difference between the difference between communication occurring in a classroom, to your house, to a party. All of those different environments are going to affect how you might interpret a message. And finally, the decoding is going to be affected by the language used as well. So are you using slang? Are you using terms that the receiver is going to understand? Okay, so there are 5 main things that are going to affect the decoding of a message. I'm just going to leave this video here. So to go back to our summary page. So we cover the 3-step communication process and effective communication, including factors that affect the decoding. So in the next slide, we're going to move on to the difference between internal and external communication in a business.